Oh my
uh,
god. Okay.
Rose,
She's so stupid.
you know my life.
So you mute and then. Oh. You don't. You can maybe say like, "Hey, Madeline's on the line. I'm gonna mute myself right now." Or do you want her to hear your presentation? No. Okay. So just be like, "We're gonna Madeline. I'll bring you in around 1 o'clock, or when you call her.
Yeah.
It's whatever."
Avoid taking time off while you know this is a polarizing topic. Although interestingly, when the website Vox asked people in
Oh,
their
sorry. Hello.
Hi.
Just she has to mute from her side.
Is that working? Can you all hear me?
Hey Madeline, we can hear you, but I
Okay.
have to mute my microphone
Okay.
because it backfires here, basically. No. So. All right, give us a second and we'll let you talk when we're ready.
Okay. Just throw up a sign.
Awesome.
Okay.
Introduce myself, Claudia again with we are the only national organization that actually advocates for Latinas and their health.
Test.
We actually focus on reproductive justice, which is why I am here today, because I am not only here to tell you about abortion access and affordability, but most importantly, how do we talk about pro-choice in a context when our communities don't often have a choice?
and I am interning in the office of Millennium. Hi, my name is Luis Tiznado from San Diego, California. With the state, and I am in Congressman Barber's office.
Hey everyone, I'm Isaiah. I'm an intern in Michael Castellanos' office. Fun from LA.
Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Hi, I'm Blair. I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I'm at the Center for American Progress. I'm a secondary and graduate fellow.
Who do you work with at that?
I'm in the teacher pipeline.
Oh, okay.
Department
Okay.
in the K-12 ed.
Awesome. Okay. Great.
Hi, Jasmine Garcia, public policy fellow, was with Congressman Juan Vargas and currently with SCA. And I'm also from San Diego, California.
I'm Matthew Rodriguez. I'm a fellow in public policy. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. I've worked with Chairman Javier Becerra in the House Caucus, CHCI, and now the Office of Public Engagement in the Office of Public Affairs in the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
So you are now
Hi.
one of the twin brothers.
I'm Randy from the Bronx, New York. I'm a
Okay.
graduate fellow.
Someone
Bronx.
from here. Over there. Okay.
What's up? I'm a graduate fellow. My first placement was with the House Judiciary Committee, where we did a lot of work stopping the attacks on Planned Parenthood in the fall.
Immigration problem.
Yeah. And I'm currently at the Federal Communications.
Oh, very nice.
My name is Sarah Garcia. I'm a graduate higher education fellow. I'm currently with Senator Patty Murray on the education team for the Health Education Labor Pensions Committee. So I'm on the committee for that. I'm about to start my job at Education Trust. So, congrats. Being hired was a nice thing. Yeah.
It's Diana Lopez. I am from Houston, Texas, and I am interning at my Congresswoman Sheila Johnson.
Yes. SLJ.
I'm Jessica Nunez. I'm from Seattle, Washington. We love women over there. And I've worked with Washington State Mural, which I've also I know about your organization through them. Yeah, Mural, and and I intern at Senator Maria Cantwell's office, and she also signed an MP3 for women's for the Texas case.
And you guys were at your
Yeah, I'm in Congressman Javier Becerra's office. Been there the whole time. I'll show you.
And then my first placement was with Congresswoman Michelle Lujan Grisham from New Mexico, and then now I'm placed with the American Public Health Association on their government relations team.
There's a former CHCI fellow there.
Nicole. Yeah,
Awesome.
she's my supervisor.
Oh, okay.
So I was actually in your seat last year. I was a public policy fellow, and I went and did my it was a year-long fellowship. I did actually serve in the South, that's why I went there. And what's pretty cool about my job now is that I get to work at the intersection of pretty much every issue that I want to dive into. But to be very frank with you, when I entered this space, I was not familiar with issues of abortion and access. I did not even know what reproductive justice meant, which one would think how did I get the job. But I interviewed for this organization because I have been doing immigration policy for many years. And as I began to really get into the immigration issue, I began to see how disproportionate actually, we saw the conversations happening around women and families, and starting to understand that there were so many other layers to our families that needed to be brought up in the policy conversation. So I felt that the Latina Institute really covered every single issue that I care most, was passionate about. And most importantly, when I started to meet some of the people that work for the organization, I was like, okay, I'm definitely going to try to work here. And like I mentioned prior to this, we are the only organization that is really advocating for Latina health by Latinas, right? And that's what makes us really unique. So we have presence in New York. We're actually based in New York City. We're right on Broad Street for those that are in New York City. We also have presence in Florida. We have presence in Texas, and we we are present in Virginia as well. Texas, Virginia. So I also manage the state policies. So most of my work is really, thinking a lot of other policy analysts and making sure that they know what's happening on immigration and making sure that we're uplifting at every level of our work the experience of immigrants, right? So Madeline, I don't know if she had a chance to introduce herself, but it would be great. She actually worked on 2 amicus briefs for us in very particular cases. So she
Madeline.
Hi.
Hi, can
Okay.
you introduce yourself?
Yes, sorry.
You're fine.
So my name is Madeline Gomez. Thank you guys for putting up with the technology problems. I'm the Reproductive Justice Fellow at National Latina Institute for Reproductive Health. I just graduated from Columbia Law School about 6 months ago, and so this is my first job out of law school. My role at NLIRH is sort of a grab bag of things, but in terms of, I think Claudia was just talking about our amicus briefs. So a huge piece of my job is to do judicial monitoring and to manage our work in the courts. And this year in particular has been just a huge year for Latinas in the courts. So there's been a lot of work on that. I also handle a lot of state policy work and kind of have my hands in a number of other health equity and abortion access things. So. Also, I can't hear you anymore, so if you're moving on, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, let me put the marker. Here you go.
Okay, so I had this really cool exercise plan, and then I was running a little late, and then I left the body was first. I couldn't get my stuff, but anyhow, we're gonna try to do it on the board, which won't be as fun, but I hope that you guys can manage. So I'm gonna draw a stick figure. Right there. Oh, I should have done it in the middle.
She'll still be there. Don't worry. Your face is just gonna be cut off a little bit. Sorry, madam.
So I want you to tell me what are factors that will influence someone's ability to access health, right? So you guys will come from different places, and you guys have probably had your own experiences accessing healthcare. So I just want you to, we can just like shout them out. Okay.
Money.
Okay, so money. I'm gonna try to keep track. What was that?
Like being exposed to actually being able to.
Awareness.
Immigration
status.
status.
I might need help.
Immigration status.
Immigration status. Language. What else?
Insurance coverage.
Maybe
Access to the internet.
age.
Access to the internet. Age.
Randy, aren't you happy to hear that? Internet.
Yeah. Okay.
I got a good section on my paper.
Okay. So someone said age. Okay.
You just family in general.
Family.
Religion.
Religion. So someone was from Kansas.
Gender.
What are factors that you see
Gender.
happening specific to Kansas?
Sex.
Get around Kansas.
Orientation.
Car.
I'm serious.
Yeah, so in order to, well, I'm from Kansas City,
Kansas
so,
City.
yeah, so on the Kansas side, you need a car.
For sure you need a car. So
Anyway.
we have transportation on there.
Yeah, Missouri side is a little easier to get around, with public transportation, it just takes a while. So it would take us here to ride the metro 30 minutes, if you would ride, the bus here, if you would ride the bus system, in Kansas, it'll take you about 2 or 3 hours.
2 to 3
for
hours.
What would be
For public
30 minutes or
transportation.
20 minutes here.
Okay.
So you pretty much need a car.
Okay. And over there.
Security.
Security. What do you mean by security?
Like a lot of people are scared to go. So
You're scared. Okay, you're scared. That's important.
Can you look up just look up Mr. Texas NOI, right?
Okay.
What else?
Oh my god.
So like, you have like friends or something that's like.
Clicked it. It's fine.
Support, right? Someone to go with you. Maybe.
Or whether it's of the dad or the baby,
Support
whoever it is.
system. Support system. Okay. Support system. How about sexuality? How do you think that impacts here?
That.
Huge.
What is it?
Sexuality. Why? Someone said why. Any thoughts? I don't know.
Well, I think when that's like your community, more than, you know, because it depends on the community where you are, your sexuality is gonna, whether you feel welcome or not.
Also, does your sexuality also, I don't, no, because it's probably wrong, like, it doesn't,
We'll
like,
correct it.
isn't certain, okay, I speak from ignorance, yeah, but isn't, like, your sexuality sometimes you're more prone to certain diseases, like in the 1980s, like the HIV outbreak, obviously, like, it impacted both straight, well, heterosexual as well as homosexuals, but, there's almost like a stigma around like homosexuality as being linked directly to HIV during those times especially. And so much discrimination and things happened that gay men were almost barred from going to clinics seeking help. That's what I get.
So stigmatization.
Oh yeah, they can't.
Bans.
Bands on doing it.
Bans, right?
But also the
Policy
cultural
bans.
competency that a doctor has while treating their patient, and not just treating them.
So you basically can. I said I can donate blood, but I don't have sex with you. When was the last time you donated?
So there's narrative, right? You mentioned, sorry, you were just going into something there.
Eligibility to donate blood, I know there were some bands and churches on it.
No, those you, sorry, cultural competency.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, and as a lesbian, I feel like there's a lot. So I had an appointment with my gynecologist earlier this week, and I mean, she was great, right? But I've had other experiences where that really limits my, ability or my wanting to disclose certain information, especially if it's an older white male doctor that kind of just, I've been in those situations where you just like, this is what you have, and like, don't ask for about it.
I think even just down to the basic definition of have you had sex in the past, whatever. Well, what do you consider sex if you're LGBTQ? Or, yeah. So it's.
And also other questions, right? You're like, asking all these questions, right?
I would also add to that list provider shortages,
Right.
as
We're
well
thinking doctors,
as
what
a
is it?
diversity of the providers.
Like we're short, yeah.
So what if I'm going to the community health center, the doctor thinks that I need to get another exam, the community health center can provide the exam, what if I need access to specialty care? But I don't have status, and I'm actually banned from the Affordable Care Act, so I also don't have insurance, but I still need to get that MRI, where do I go? The emergency. You could go to the emergency system, right? What happens in the emergency care usually? You wait for a long time, right? I mean, depending, but usually, what else?
Yeah, but it's also really expensive.
Costs, right? So we already have costs, we already have costs there. Okay, so is there anything else?
Or you just don't go.
Or you just don't go, right? So if you can go down. So I provided for you guys a couple of, actually we have them up here. My lines.
I handed them out.
The big reports.
Oh, they're down.
Oh, the big, okay. Yep.
So something that was really impactful for me in the board was a couple of you guys are from Texas. Madeline is actually from Texas. But we have we had a human rights campaign that we did in partnership with the Center for Reproductive Rights. And after Texas law that shut a lot of abortion clinics happened, there were all these issues that were coming up. So we operate under the framework that really reproductive justice can get attained with all people, right? Have the economic power, the political power, the social power, and the resources
make healthy decisions about themselves, their partners, their families, their communities. So that's the big thing, right? And we did this work in Texas, and there was a closure of family planning clinics, right? So someone mentioned, I think, I'm sorry, your name again. Yeah, Jessica. So Jessica mentioned types of providers, right? So for many, and again, I'm the immigrant policy analyst, so I will be mentioning a lot about immigration because that's my work. But for many immigrant families, and particularly immigrant women in Texas and the Rio Grande Valley, family planning clinics were the only access to a provider that they had. So oftentimes, I am not here to necessarily change your views about abortion, and those are personal decisions, but I'm here to tell you some of the complexities, some of the narratives, and how that looks like when it becomes implemented, right? So for many Latinas and for many immigrants, right, attacks on abortion providers are attacks on a whole woman's health and an ability for women to be access to health care they need and when they need it. So something that was interesting, a factor here is also time. I thought that was interesting that wasn't mentioned. And I guess because we're also talking about Latinidad in a way, right? Like race is very important. And it's funny because a lot of people will mention race in these exercises. And that's so critical, right? So when you hear the narrative oftentimes, like, we're gonna shut down this clinics, what does that mean for women in the Rio Grande Valley, right? What does that mean for people that are in border communities? So for instance, we also have internal border checkpoints. What happens when someone's undocumented and needs to move doctor, but doesn't feel safe traveling from this area to another because at that point there's a CBP checkpoint? How does that impact a woman, a family's ability to access care? So I'm going to show you guys, or they're going to show you guys this video. Go to Metro Texas, and I have the reports, and we can talk a little bit more about it. I don't need to watch this like it's a bad video.
Hold on a second.
Oh, and then so you're going to hear.
I know.
It's okay.
I gotta mute my
Poderosas, because like the church is so Poderosa, so it's very common to hear like, oh, los Poderosas are organizing something and they may have hilarities as well. So I wanted to show you this video. I know we're running out of time. I want my colleagues to speak on the cases. But essentially what I wanted to take away from that is that there's all these complexities and intersections, you know, of a woman's life. And that's where we are at, right? So we recognize that there is more than just your status, you know, there's more than just your access to care. There's all these other factors that might limit you in terms of being able to access something when you really need it. And most importantly, right, and Madeline's going to get into this, we want to make sure that people understand that it's about choices, right, and what choices actually look like for different communities. So aside from, you know, the conversation on abortion, we actually did a poll in 2011 where it was a poll specific for Latinos. How many of you guys have heard the phrase, well, Latinos are mostly Catholic, therefore they don't support abortion? All of us, right? While some may hold that to be true, what we actually found out in our poll, which is very specific to the community, is that sometimes, you know, the way these questions are asked are, you know, depending on how you frame the questions, the answer you're going to get, right? So you have this pro-life, pro-choice, but what does actually mean for Latinos? So we have some numbers, and we're actually going to be putting out the numbers next week, so I can share that the most updated ones, 2011. Our new report is coming out literally on Monday, but we're hoping it'll be done today. But the key findings of that report were that 74% of those Latinos, and we focus on voters for other reasons, right? So 74% of Latinos support a woman's right to make decisions. 73% of Latinos don't think we should judge other women's decisions. 67% of Latino voters said they would give support to a close friend or family member who had an abortion. 43% say they would provide a lot of support. Only 23% said they will not feel comfortable offering support. 61% of Latinos agree with the amount of money a woman has or does not should not determine whether she could have an abortion when she needs one. And 68% are willing to disagree with church, right? So these numbers are very interesting because from those numbers we created this campaign called Yo Te Apoyo, right? So if that's not the choice for me, it doesn't necessarily mean that I can support someone else. And this is why we also have a young parents dignity agenda, because we know that many folks in our community become parent at a younger age, but they also need support. So we don't have these conversations all the time. So our Latina Advocacy Network in New York City actually runs this program that seeks to educate a lot of the young parents so that they are also willing to engage their communities and their role as parents. Because we believe that a woman, a family's choice, you know, to whether to parent or to not, resides in that individual, right? So Yo Te Apoyo is a campaign that we've been doing now for many years. And this is something that, you know, we seek to really encourage people to understand that it's more than just talking about pro-life, but just talking about what that actually looks like. So Madeline is going to touch more specifically into these two cases that one of them is actually being heard next week. HB2, we're having this really badass rally that I was going to be speaking about. But she's going to tell you a little bit more about what the amicus brief is, what that means, and what the work that she did. So have the legal knowledge.
Thank you, Clark.
Okay. Can I get like a thumbs up or something? Are we good? Y'all can hear me? Great. Excellent. Okay, so I'm really glad that Claudia did that whole introduction on intersectionality. It's so crucial to the work that we do in the courts, and I will touch on that in a second. First, I'm just going to outline the two cases that we are paying particularly close attention to this term. The first is Whole Women's Health v. Hellerstedt. That's what Claudia was just talking about, the case out of Texas. And the second is Zubik v. Burwell. Like I said, there are a handful of other cases that we're also watching, but these are the two that we've been most actively involved in. So Whole Women's Health v. Hellerstedt is a case out of Texas. It is challenging two provisions of an omnibus anti-abortion bill passed in 2013. Those two, there are a number of other provisions within the bill, but this case is just about two of them, and they are first a provision requiring that doctors have admitting privileges in a hospital within 30 miles of where they provide abortions. And then the second requires that all clinics in which doctors provide abortions meet the standards for an ambulatory surgical center. I think you guys watched the John Oliver video, which really touched on a lot of the kind of arbitrary and onerous regulations involved in these provisions. So I won't get too in the weeds on them. But what's important to know, and I think John Oliver also talked about this, is that the effect of HB2, and particularly these two provisions, has been to drastically reduce the number of abortion clinics in Texas. So before HB2 went into effect in 2013, there were about 41 clinics. Currently, there are 19. And if it goes fully into effect, which is to say if we lose at the court this term, there will be less than 10. And the other sort of number that I think is really important for you to know is that there are 5.4 million women of reproductive age in Texas. 2.5 million of those are Latinas, actually. So, I mean, 10 clinics for that many women is just hugely destructive, and I mean, it's a huge problem. It creates all of these barriers to access. So I will get back to sort of our involvement in that case. I want to move on and talk about Zubik. Zubik v. Burwell has not gotten quite as much press as Whole Women's Health because it is sort of a wonkier case in a lot of ways. It is a challenge to the no-cost contraceptive coverage requirement of the Affordable Care Act, brought by religiously affiliated organizations. So we're talking about nursing homes, soup kitchens, universities. And these employers argue that the accommodation that's set out in the Affordable Care Act, so it's already accommodating their religious beliefs, but they argue that the accommodation in and of itself violates their religious freedom under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, or RFRA. So essentially they argue that the form they have to fill out, where they just sign a piece of paper, state their objection to providing contraceptive coverage, and hand it over to their insurance provider, that is a substantial burden on their religious beliefs. The government, oh, sorry, actually, let me back up for a second. So the aspect of that they're saying is the burden is that they say that signing the form triggers contraceptive coverage and makes them complicit in the use of contraception by their employees. And that is, you know, somehow like because they're complicit in sin, this is a burden on their religion. It's a little bit of a convoluted and attenuated argument, but it's available because of a case called Hobby Lobby from a few years ago that you may know about. Again, I won't get further into the weeds there, but the government argues that in fact employers are providing the same information they've been providing always. They are giving their insurance providers a list of employees that need coverage. They're giving them a form that says that they don't provide contraceptive coverage. They've always done this. The government is separately taking this information and doing something with it that they haven't done before, and the government says they have the right to do that. So in fact, there's no triggering. It's just a separate sort of statutory situation that they've developed. And so the question sort of becomes whether or not this is a burden on religion. So left out of Zubik, which is actually much more present in Whole Women's Health, is the women and families that are going to be impacted by these laws, or this interpretation, or the court decision, however you want to frame it. But they both really do come down to the question about who has the right to impose access to health care, whether or not we are comfortable allowing these impositions upon the right to health care, and what obstacles are too many. And the question that doesn't get asked so much in the courts is when you talk about the obstacles, the next question is for whom? And so that's the role that NLIRH has really tried to play. So in each of these cases, we have submitted amicus briefs. And for those of you that aren't lawyers in the crowd or aren't super, you know, avid court watchers, an amicus brief or amicus curiae is a friend of the court brief. And basically, it's organizations, lawyers, scholars, whoever, that comes in and says, we have a perspective you should be taking into consideration that is perhaps left out of the merits briefs submitted by the parties. And we think that we have a really important role to play as amici in these cases, again, because so often our constituency is left out of the conversation. So in Whole Women's Health and in Zubik, we filed briefs. We took 2 different strategies on each of the briefs, but both with the same goal in mind. The goal being to illuminate the matrix of identities that can work together to impede access and sort of the matrix of oppressions that exists. So that's all the stuff that Claudia was talking with you all about, whether it's immigration status, socioeconomics, race, ethnicity, social stigma, abusive relationships. Like there's all of these range of issues. And we really try to argue that the court should not be looking at these questions, whether it's a provision in HB2 or the question of a religious accommodation for contraceptive coverage. They shouldn't be looking at those questions in a vacuum. They should be taking them as a holistic approach. So in Whole Women's Health, the way that we really presented this argument was to rely very heavily on narratives. We interviewed a number of women in Texas, Latino women in Texas who were seeking abortion care, and asked them basically to give us their stories. We had women talk about driving hundreds of miles to access care, women who had to work overtime, women who were demoted or lost their jobs because they had to take time off to go get care. We had women who talked about waiting to schedule their appointments for when their children were in daycare or in school because they couldn't afford separate childcare. We had women who talked about considering traveling to Mexico or considering having to carry the pregnancy full term. There's just these number of sort of compounding decisions that women have to make, and so we took those narratives and tried to clarify them for the court, really ask them to put a face on the women who will be feeling the burdens of HB2 most heavily. In Zubik, it was a little bit harder. We didn't have narratives. So instead, we took a broad coalition of folks, not just Latinas, but Black women's health organizations, Asian Pacific American organizations, LGBTQ rights organizations, youth advocates, a whole number of folks, and tried to bring together a set of data that could paint a picture for the kinds of people that these religious organizations employ and serve. So in some instances, like I said, they're talking about universities. That's obviously young people. Young people face a whole host of issues accessing care that may be different from what an adult Latina woman would face. But of course, there are young Latino women, and try to use data to kind of set up that matrix and clarify the burdens. And at the end of the day, of course, what we're arguing in both briefs is that our rights cannot be theoretical or mythical, and that folks need to be able to effectuate their rights and access healthcare regardless of geography, status, age, race, ethnicity. I think we were very successful in that. I hope so. There are a number of things that you consider when you're writing an amicus brief. One is talking to the justices and trying to give them tools to use in making their arguments on your behalf, you hope. The other, though, is also creating a public face for an argument. And in that way, I think our briefs are particularly helpful. It really does a lot of work to lift up the reproductive justice frame and to give people a sense of what it means to be an RJ advocate and lawyer.